Chen pushed his cleaning cart down the gleaming marble hallway of Apex Financial's 42nd floor, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished stone. The sound echoed through the empty corridors at 11 p.m., when the building's corporate warriors had long since retreated to their penthouses and suburban mansions. But Marcus preferred it this way, invisible, unremarkable. Just another face in the army of night shift workers who kept the corporate machine running. He paused outside the glass-walled conference room where earlier that day he'd witnessed something that made his blood boil. Through the transparent barriers, he'd watched CEO Jonathan Blackwood and his executive team laughing as they discussed their latest cost-cutting measures. 50 families would lose their jobs by Christmas. 50 families whose only crime was working for a company that valued profit over people. Did you see the janitor's face when we talked about the layoffs? Blackwood had chuckled to his CFO, Rebecca Sterling. I swear these people think we actually care about their opinions. Marcus had continued mopping, his face a mask of neutral indifference. While inside, he calculated exactly how much satisfaction he'd feel when he finally revealed the truth. The truth that Marcus Chen wasn't just a janitor, he was Marcus Chen, billionaire founder of Chen Dynamics, and as of 3 hours ago, the majority shareholder of Apex Financial. Now, as he sprayed cleaner on the conference table where his fate had been decided by men who didn't even know his real name, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow would change everything. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant, Sarah. Acquisition complete. Legal docs filed. You own 51% as of market close. Ready for tomorrow's board meeting? Marcus typed back. More than ready. Time to clean house. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling. Seattle's typical November weather matching Marcus's mood as he clocked in at 6 a.m. He'd been working at Apex Financial for exactly 6 months. Ever since he'd decided that the best way to understand a company's true culture was to experience it from the bottom up. Hey, Marco, called out Janet, the day shift security guard, using the fake name on his employment records. Early again, I see. You sure you're not angling for a promotion to supervisor? Marcus grinned and adjusted his janitor's uniform. Polyester shirt that costs less than what most Apex executives spent on coffee each morning. Just trying to stay ahead of the mess, Janet. You know how these corporate types are. Don't I ever, she laughed, returning to her crossword puzzle. Marcus made his way to the supply closet on the 38th floor. Passing through the maze of cubicles, where Apex's mid-level employees were already arriving, clutching their coffee cups like life preservers. He'd learned their names, their stories, their struggles over the past 6 months. People like David Kim, a financial analyst, supporting 2 kids on his own after his wife's cancer battle bankrupted them despite having excellent health insurance, or Maria Santos, a single mother working overtime to afford her daughter's college tuition. These were the people Blackwood was planning to discard like used tissues, as Marcus began his morning routine of emptying trash cans and restocking supplies. He overheard conversations that made his jaw clench. In the break room, 2 junior executives were discussing their weekend-planned ski trips to Aspen. Wine tastings in Napa Valley. While just outside, he'd heard Maria on the phone with her daughter, explaining why she couldn't afford new textbooks. This semester, morning Marco, came a familiar voice behind him. Marcus turned to see David Kim approaching with his usual, tired smile. Unlike most employees, David had always treated the custodial staff with genuine respect, remembering their names and asking about their families. Morning, Mr. Kim, Marcus replied, maintaining his cover. How's the new project going? David's expression darkened. Between you and me, Marco, I'm worried. There's a board meeting today and rumors are flying about major restructuring. They're looking to cut costs. ... double quotes. He shrugged helplessly.
Ow.
People like me are expendable. Marcus felt his resolve hardened further. I wouldn't worry too much about it, he said carefully. Sometimes change brings better opportunities than you'd expect. David gave him a puzzled look but smiled. You know, Marco, you always seem to know more than you let on. There's something different about you. Before Marcus could respond, the elevator chimed, and Jonathan Blackwood stepped out. His $3,000 suit and platinum Rolex, announcing his presence like a royal fanfare. He swept past David without acknowledgement and barely glanced at Marcus before heading toward his corner office. "See what I mean?" David muttered. Two guys like him were all invisible. Marcus watched Blackwood disappear around the corner, then checked his watch. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. He had exactly 3 hours to complete the final phase of his plan. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. 9:45 a.m. Marcus positioned his cleaning cart outside the main boardroom. Through the glass walls, he watched as Apex Financial's board of directors filed in, their expensive suits and confident demeanor radiating the kind of arrogance that came from never having to worry about a paycheck. Jonathan Blackwood sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, shuffling through papers with the casual indifference of a man about to destroy 50 lives. Rebecca Sterling, his CFO, was busy on her phone, probably arranging another shopping trip with the money they'd saved from the layoffs. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blackwood began, his voice carrying through the glass, "today we're going to discuss the final phase of our efficiency optimization program. As you know, we've identified several redundant positions." Marcus continued, dusting the exterior windows, his movements methodical and steady, while his mind raced through the timeline. Any moment now, his lawyer would be delivering the acquisition documents to the receptionist downstairs. The legal takeover was complete, but the real satisfaction would come from the look on their faces when they realized who'd been watching them all along. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Documents delivered. Building security has your real credentials. Ready when you are, Mr. Chen." Marcus typed back, "Give me 5 minutes." Inside the boardroom, Blackwood had moved to the presentation screen, where a PowerPoint slide displayed the names and positions of the employees marked for termination. Marcus recognized every name. Good people, hard workers, the backbone of the company's daily operations. "As you can see," Blackwood continued, "eliminating these positions will save us approximately $3.2 million annually. Of course, there will be some temporary disruption, but I'm confident we can maintain productivity with the remaining staff working additional hours." Several board members nodded approvingly. Marcus noted their faces, memorizing which ones had the decency to look uncomfortable and which ones seemed eager to celebrate the cost savings. Rebecca Sterling leaned forward. "What about potential legal challenges? Some of these employees have been with the company for over a decade." Blackwood waved dismissively. "Our legal team has assured me that we're well within our rights. These people serve at will, and frankly, most of them should be grateful they've had jobs this long. The market's competitive. They need to adapt or move on." Marcus felt his controls slipping, his hands tightening on the cleaning cloth. For 6 months, he'd forced himself to remain calm, to play the role of the invisible janitor while gathering intelligence about Apex's culture and practices. But hearing Blackwood speak about his employees, like disposable resources, pushed him dangerously close to his breaking point. He pulled out his phone and sent one final text. Now, within seconds, his attorney would be requesting an immediate audience with the board to discuss urgent matters regarding company ownership. Marcus straightened his shoulders, mentally preparing to drop the mask he'd worn for half a year. The elevator chimed down the hall, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. Marcus watched as Apex's head of legal, a nervous man named Peterson, practically sprinted toward the boardroom with a manila envelope clutched in his sweating hands. Peterson burst through the boardroom doors without knocking, his face pale and his usual composure completely shattered. "Mr. Blackwood," he gasped, interrupting the presentation. "Sir, we have a situation. A major situation." The room fell silent. Blackwood's confident expression shifted to annoyance, then to concern as he noticed Peterson's obvious distress. "What kind of situation, Peterson? Can't you see we're in the middle of an important meeting?" Peterson glanced around the room nervously, then held up the envelope. "Sir, we've just received notification that Apex Financial has been acquired, effective immediately. 51% of our shares were purchased through a series of shell companies, and the new majority owner is requesting an immediate board meeting to discuss restructuring. The color drained from Blackwood's face. That's impossible. Who would have known about any major stock movements? Who the hell the new owner wishes to address the board personally? Peterson interrupted. He's here now. Marcus checked his reflection in the window, smoothed down his janitor's uniform, and smiled. Showtime. Marcus walked into the boardroom without ceremony, his cleaning cart squeaking softly on the marble floor. Every head turned toward him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright irritation. "Excuse me, Rebecca," Sterling snapped. "This is a private board meeting. Maintenance staff need to schedule." "My apologies for the interruption, Marcus," said his voice carrying a calm authority that hadn't been there moments before. He reached into his cart and pulled out a leather portfolio, placing it on the polished table. "But I believe this meeting concerns me directly." Blackwood's face flushed red. "Peterson, get security up here immediately. This is completely unacceptable." "That won't be necessary," Marcus interrupted, opening the portfolio and sliding documents across the table. "Though you might want to take a look at these first." The board members leaned forward, squinting at the papers with growing bewilderment. Marcus watched as recognition dawned on Peterson's face. First, the legal documents, the acquisition papers, the transfer of ownership. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said, pulling off his janitor's name tag and dropping it onto the table, "allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm the founder and CEO of Chen Dynamics, and as of yesterday's market close, I own 51% of Apex Financial." The silence that followed was deafening. Blackwood's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Rebecca Sterling's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. Around the table, the other board members sat frozen in shock. Blackwood finally managed, "That's impossible. You're the janitor." Marcus smiled coldly. "Yes, Jonathan, I've been your janitor for 6 months. I've emptied your trash, cleaned your conference rooms, listened to every callous word you've spoken about the people who work for this company." He moved to the presentation screen, where the termination list still glowed in harsh fluorescent light. "This list, for example, it's 50 families you were planning to destroy before Christmas. People like David Kim, who's been working 18-hour days to pay off his wife's medical bills. Or Maria Santos, who's been here for 12 years and still can't afford her daughter's college textbooks. "You were spying on us, Rebecca," Sterling accused, finding her voice. "I was learning," Marcus corrected. "You see, 6 months ago, I was considering acquiring Apex Financial as a subsidiary of Chen Dynamics. But I wanted to understand the company culture first. I wanted to see how you treated your employees when you thought nobody important was watching." He gestured toward the window overlooking the city. "Chen Dynamics employs over 30,000 people worldwide. We're worth approximately $8 billion. We've built that success on a simple principle. Take care of your people, and they'll take care of your business." Blackwood finally found his composure, straightening his tie. With shaking hands, "You can't just walk in here, and actually, I can." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed them the acquisition documents. 51% ownership means I control this company now. It's effective immediately. There are going to be some changes. The room erupted in protests and indignant sputtering. But Marcus raised his hand for silence. First, he continued, the termination list is canceled. Not only will these 50 employees keep their jobs, but they'll all receive immediate 20% salary increases. Rebecca Sterling shot to her feet. That's completely irresponsible. The shareholders? I am the primary shareholder, Marcus reminded her calmly. Second, we're implementing a new healthcare plan that will cover 100% of medical expenses for employees and their families. Mr. Kim shouldn't have to choose between his wife's cancer treatment and his children's future. He turned to face Blackwood directly. And third, there are going to be some immediate changes in leadership. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. Blackwood's face had progressed from pale to red to an alarming shade of purple. You can't remove me as CEO. I have a contract. A contract with the previous ownership structure, Marcus interrupted, consulting his portfolio, which included several fascinating clauses that your legal team apparently didn't read carefully, including one that allows for immediate termination in cases of gross misconduct or failure to meet fiduciary responsibilities. He pulled out a thick folder and dropped it on the table. This contains 6 months of documentation. Expense account abuse, including that $50,000 wine cellar you charged a client. Entertainment, harassment complaints that were buried by HR. And my personal favorite, the bonus structure, that rewarded executives for cutting employee benefits. Peterson, still pale as paper, nervously cleared his throat. Mr. Chen, I should mention that as head of legal, I was never consulted about many of these ... irregularities. I know, Marcus said kindly. I also know you filed 3 separate memos questioning the legality of the bonus structure and were told to stay in your lane? You'll be keeping your job, Peterson. Relief flooded the lawyer's face as Blackwood looked around the table desperately, seeking support from the other board members. He found none. They were all too busy studying the acquisition documents and calculating their own positions in the new hierarchy. Rebecca Marcus turned to the CFO. Your creative accounting practices are particularly impressive. Moving employee healthcare costs to a subsidiary to make the profit margins look better. Charging employee training expenses as consulting fees to inflate the budget? You'll be receiving a call from the SEC within the week. Rebecca Sterling's composure finally cracked. You can't prove any of that. I can and I will. But I'm offering you a choice. Resign immediately with a basic severance package or face criminal charges for securities fraud. Your decision? She stared at him for a long moment, then grabbed her purse and stalked toward the door. This isn't over, Chen. Yes, it is, Marcus called after her. Security will escort you out. As the door slammed behind her, Marcus turned back to the remaining board members. For the rest of you, I'm offering a simple proposition. Help me rebuild this company into something we can all be proud of. Or join Rebecca in the unemployment line. The response was immediate and unanimous. Heads nodded around the table like bobblehead dolls in an earthquake. Excellent, Marcus smiled. Our first order of business will be establishing an employee profit-sharing program. 30% of annual profits will be distributed among all non-executive staff based on tenure and performance. One of the older board members, a woman named Margaret Foster, who'd looked uncomfortable during the termination discussion, raised her hand tentatively. Mr. Chen, if I may ask, why did you go through all this? You could have simply bought the company and fired everyone you disagreed with. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about David Kim's tired smile, Maria Santos' worried phone calls, and the dozens of other employees who'd shown him kindness when they thought he was just a janitor. Because, he said finally, the true measure of a company isn't its profit margins or stock price. It's how it treats people when it thinks nobody's watching. And Apex Financial failed that test spectacularly. He moved to the window, looking down at the city below where thousands of people were starting their lunch breaks, unaware that their lives had just changed for the better. But we're going to fix that, Marcus continued. We're going to prove that you can run a profitable business while actually caring about your employees? Revolutionary concept, I know. Nervous laughter rippled around the table. Peterson, Marcus said, I need you to draft immediate memos to all department heads. Effective Monday, we're implementing flex time, work from home options, and a new parental leave policy. 6 months paid leave for new parents, regardless of gender. As Peterson scribbled notes frantically, Marcus turned to address the room one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new Apex Financial. We're going to build something extraordinary here. Something that proves business success and human decency aren't mutually exclusive. He gathered his papers, then paused at the door. Oh, and Jonathan, security will be by your office in 10 minutes to collect your access cards and company property. The exit interview will be conducted by David Kim. Remember him, the expendable analyst with the sick wife? Is our new CFO. The look of pure shock on Blackwood's face was worth every penny Marcus had spent on the acquisition. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the same boardroom, But everything had changed. The walls were covered with charts showing employee satisfaction, scores, productivity metrics, and most importantly, the faces and stories of Apex Financial's workforce. Gone were the cold corporate headshots of executives. In their place were photos from the company's first annual Employee Appreciation Day, showing real people celebrating real achievements. The numbers are remarkable, David Kim was saying. Still adjusting to his new role as CFO, employee productivity is up 37%, sick days are down 40%. And we've received over 300 applications for open positions. Marcus nodded with satisfaction. What about retention? 0 departures in 3 weeks? David grinned. In fact, Maria Santos told me yesterday that her daughter's planning to apply for our summer internship program. The boardroom door opened, and Peterson entered with his daily report. The nervous man had transformed into a confident legal advisor, finally able to practice law with integrity. Mr. Chen, he said, I have updates on several fronts. First, the SEC investigation into Rebecca Sterling's activities has resulted in formal charges. Second, we've received acquisition offers from 3 competitors who apparently want to buy our secret to employee satisfaction. Marcus laughed. Tell them the secret isn't for sale, but they're welcome to try treating their employees like human beings. And third, Peterson continued with a slight smile. Someone left this on the reception desk for you. He handed Marcus a handwritten note. The paper was slightly wrinkled, written in careful cursive that suggested an older author. Dear Mr. Chen, Marcus read aloud. My name is Janet Morrison, and I work security on the ground floor. I wanted you to know that in 30 years of working in corporate buildings, I've never seen anything like what you've done here. Yesterday, I watched David Kim, who you probably remember was worried about losing his job, help his daughter with her homework. In the lobby while waiting for his wife to pick him up from work, he wasn't stressed about staying late or working weekends anymore. He was just happy. You didn't just save 50 jobs, Mr. Chen. You gave 50 families their lives back. Thank you for seeing us when everyone else looked right through us. Respectfully, Janet. The room was quiet for a moment as Marcus folded the letter carefully. You know, said Margaret Foster, who'd become one of his strongest allies on the board, when I first started in corporate finance 40 years ago, I thought business was supposed to be cold and ruthless. Caring about employees was a sign of weakness. And now? Marcus asked. Now. I realized that compassion isn't a weakness, it's a competitive advantage. Our employees aren't just working harder, they're working smarter because they trust us. They're sharing ideas, staying late not because they have to, but because they want to, bringing their friends to work here. She gestured toward the productivity charts. You can't fake that kind of engagement. Marcus walked to the window, looking down at the lobby where he could see employees chatting and laughing during their lunch break, a far cry from the stressed, fearful faces he'd observed 6 months ago. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Chen Dynamics board meeting in an hour. They want to discuss expanding the Apex model to other subsidiaries. Marcus smiled. The revolution was just beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the room, I have a proposal. What if we didn't keep this transformation to ourselves? What if we proved that the Apex model could work anywhere? David looked up from his financial reports. You mean acquire? Other companies? Change the entire industry, Marcus said. One company at a time, one employee at a time. We build a network of businesses that compete on compassion instead of cruelty. The energy in the room shifted, excitement replacing the cautious hope that had characterized their earlier meetings. Think about it, Marcus continued. Every time we acquire a struggling company, we're not just buying assets, we're rescuing families. We're proving that success doesn't require sacrifice humanity. Peterson raised his hand tentatively. What would you call this initiative? Marcus thought for a moment, remembering his 6 months as an invisible janitor, seeing the company's true character when no one thought he mattered. The Dignity Project, he said finally. Because every person deserves to be seen, valued, and treated with respect, regardless of their title or position. As the meeting broke up and board members filed out, chatting excitedly about implementation strategies and target companies, Marcus remained at the window. In the reflection, he could almost see his janitor's uniform, a reminder of the lessons he'd learned while invisible. His phone rang. David Kim's voice came through the speaker, excited and slightly breathless. "Mr. Chen, you need to see this. We just received our biggest contract in company history, $50 million from Patterson Industries. They said they specifically wanted to work with us because of our reputation for employee treatment. Apparently, word is spreading in the industry about how we do business." Marcus smiled, watching the sunset paint Seattle's skyline in shades of gold and possibility. "David," he said, "I think we're just getting started." As he gathered his papers and prepared to leave, Marcus paused at the spot where Blackwood's termination list had once been displayed. In its place was a new poster photo from Employee Appreciation Day showing the entire Apex Financial staff, smiling and celebrating together. At the bottom, in simple text, was the company's new motto: "Success, measured in lives improved." Marcus Chen, former janitor and secret billionaire, walked out of the boardroom with the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's making everything better. The auditorium at Seattle University was packed, beyond capacity, with students sitting in the aisles and standing along the walls. Marcus Chen adjusted his microphone as he looked out at the sea of eager faces: business students, entrepreneurs, and working professionals who'd come to hear about the dignity revolution. "A year ago," Marcus began, "I was emptying trash cans and mopping floors at Apex Financial. Today, Apex is the most sought-after employer in the Pacific Northwest, and our Dignity Project has transformed 17 companies across 6 states. In the front row, he spotted familiar faces. David Kim sat next to his wife, healthy and radiant after her successful treatment. Paid for entirely by Apex's new healthcare plan. Beside them, Maria Santos beamed with pride as her daughter, now an Apex intern, took notes on her tablet. But the real measure of success, Marcus continued, isn't in our profit margins. Though I'm happy to report they've increased by 340% this year." Appreciative murmurs rippled through the audience. "The real measure is in stories like these, ... The presentation screen lit up with a photo of Janet Morrison cutting the ribbon at Apex's new on-site childcare center. Janet, our head of security, suggested we provide childcare for employees. That single idea has reduced absenteeism by 60% and attracted top talent from across the industry." Another slide showed Peterson no longer nervous, confident and smiling, accepting an award for corporate legal ethics from the Washington State Bar Association. "It's the most common question I get," Marcus said, "is whether treating employees well is sustainable in a competitive market. Let me share some numbers with you." He clicked to a graph showing Apex's performance compared to industry standards. Employee retention, 98% versus industry average of 67%. Customer satisfaction, 96% versus industry average of 71%. Revenue growth, 340% versus industry average of 12%. A student in the back raised her hand. "Mr. Chen, what happened to the executives you fired?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Jonathan Blackwood is currently serving 18 months for securities fraud and tax evasion. Becca Sterling took a plea deal and is doing community service, specifically teaching financial literacy at homeless shelters. Ironic, considering she claimed to care so much about efficiency." Laughter filled the auditorium. "But here's what's really interesting," Marcus continued. 3 former Apex competitors have reached out asking to be acquired by our Dignity Project. They've seen their best employees leaving for companies that treat people with respect, and they're finally ready to change." He clicked to the final slide, a world map dotted with pins representing Dignity Project companies. "Next month, we're expanding internationally. Turns out the desire to be treated with dignity isn't uniquely American." As the presentation ended, and applause filled the auditorium, Marcus felt his phone buzz. A text from Sarah. "Emergency board meeting requested by Patterson Industries. They want to discuss a $500 million partnership. Also, someone from the White House called about consulting on workplace reform policy." Marcus chuckled, remembering when his biggest concern was whether he'd correctly sorted the recycling. During the Q&A session that followed, A young woman stood up near the back. "Mr. Chen, do you ever regret giving up your anonymity? You could have stayed hidden, just observed from the shadows." Marcus paused, thinking about the question seriously. 6 months as a janitor taught me something valuable, he said finally. The most important work often happens in the shadows. The people who clean our offices, prepare our food, secure our buildings, they see everything, but we pretend they're invisible. He gestured toward Janet Morrison, who was sitting in the audience. Janet noticed that employees were more stressed during certain times of the year. Her observation led us to implement flexible scheduling around tax season, back to school, time, and holidays. That's the kind of insight you only get when you value everyone's perspective. After the presentation, Marcus stood in the lobby, shaking hands and taking photos with attendees. David Kim approached with his family in tow. "Mr. Chen," David said, "I wanted you to meet my daughter, Sarah. She's starting at Stanford next fall, studying business ethics. Says she wants to start her own dignity project company someday." The teenager stepped forward confidently. "Mr. Kim, Mr. Cheneve, been thinking about your janitor experience. What if every business executive had to spend a month working an entry-level job in their own company? You can't fix what you don't understand, right?" Marcus grinned. "Sarah, how would you like a summer internship at Chen Dynamics? Might be onto something revolutionary." As the crowd dispersed and Marcus made his way to the parking garage, he passed a group of janitors cleaning the university building. Unlike a year ago, he didn't just see them, he stopped. "Excuse me," he said to the crew supervisor. "I'm Marcus Chen from Chen Dynamics. Would you mind if I asked what you think about your working conditions here?" The supervisor looked surprised, but pleased to be asked. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus listened to insights about efficiency, employee satisfaction, and management blind spots that would have cost a consulting firm hundreds of thousands to discover. Driving home through Seattle's evening traffic, Marcus reflected on the irony. He'd started this journey seeking revenge against executives who treated people poorly. Instead, he discovered something far more valuable: the power of actually seeing and valuing every person in an organization. His phone rang through the car speakers. Janet Morrison's voice filled the car. "It's Mr. Chen, I hope you don't mind me calling. I just wanted you to know. My grandson started working part-time at Apex last week, customer service. And today, for the first time in my 30 years of corporate security, I watched a CEO work personally welcome a part-time teenager on his first day. You remembered his name, asked about his college plans, and treated him like he mattered." Her voice got a little emotional. "That boy's going to remember that moment for the rest of his life." That's the real dignity project right there. As Marcus pulled into his driveway, he looked up at his house, still the same modest home he'd lived in for years, despite his billions. Some things didn't need to change, but others did. Tomorrow, he'd be visiting 3 more companies interested in joining the Dignity Project. Next month, he'd be testifying before Congress about workplace reform. And next year, if Sarah Kim's internship went well, maybe he'd have a new business partner with fresh ideas about revolutionary change. Marcus. Chen smiled as he walked to his front door, remembering Janet's words from a year ago. "You gave 50 families their lives back." Now it was thousands of families. Soon, maybe millions. The invisible janitor had become visible. The revolution was just beginning. What did you think of this thrilling journey? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest tales. What kind of story would you like to hear next?